If you can scroll TikTok for an hour without even noticing, you can focus for 15 minutes on building a future that actually matters to you. In 2025, online attention is measured in seconds, about 8 on average. On a single screen, people switch tasks every 40 to 50 seconds, and after an interruption, it takes around 23 to 25 minutes to fully refocus. No wonder studying, side hustles, or even creative projects feel harder than they should. The good news? You don't need superhuman endurance. I'll show you how to start with short 5 15-minute sessions and build to 2+ hour deep work blocks in 6 months. And it all begins by rethinking how small those first steps should be. Why small is the secret weapon. Most people picture productivity as a grueling affair, hours chained to a desk, powering through endless tasks with monk-like focus. Just imagining it is enough to wear you out. That image alone discourages people from even starting because it feels unattainable. And here's the trap. Believing productivity has to be built on massive, exhausting blocks of time is one of the main reasons people stay stuck. Take the classic scenario. Someone decides they're going to completely overhaul their life. They wake at 5 a.m., dive into an intense workout, meditate, study for an hour, then launch into a marathon 4-hour deep work session before breakfast. On paper, it looks like a dream routine. In reality, it usually lasts 2 days before collapsing. Not because the person is weak or unmotivated, but because the starting point was too ambitious. When the bar is set that high, the brain often perceives it as a threat. Big, sudden changes signal danger in our wiring, and the result is resistance rather than momentum. That resistance can be subtle. It shows up in the way distractions become irresistible at the exact moment you sit down to focus. It's the sudden heaviness in your body, the endless micro-delays like, the lighting isn't right yet, or I need stronger coffee first. These aren't failures of willpower. They're signs that the brain is interpreting the change as unsafe and pushing you away from it. This is why shrinking the target is so effective. When you lower the threshold, commit not to 4 hours, but to just 10 or 15 minutes, the resistance fades. 10 minutes doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It feels almost too easy, and because it's easy, you actually begin. Once you're started, something interesting happens. You often go beyond the limit because the hardest part was crossing that invisible wall at the beginning. What begins as a short session quickly becomes proof. You end it with a win under your belt, reinforcing the belief that you can focus when you choose. And that win matters more than it looks. Reliable research on focus backs this up. In the same way a muscle grows by adding reps over time, deep focus tolerance expands through repeated, manageable sessions. As Cal Newport's work on deep work points out, your capacity grows with deliberate practice, not with one-off marathons. Starting with tiny, rep-based sprints of concentration is like training at the gym. You begin light, and over the weeks, what once felt heavy becomes routine. The long-term results of this approach compound quickly. Within days, you notice that your 10 or 15 minutes feels more natural than it used to. What once seemed like not enough time turns into a reliable building block. After weeks, your tolerance lengthens to 30 minutes, then an hour, and before long, 2 or 3 hours of deep work is no longer a fantasy. It becomes the obvious next step. And here's another important effect. By starting small, you avoid triggering the brain's full defensive response. When the task is framed as a short, finite sprint, your nervous system doesn't sound the alarm. That's crucial, because once an interruption or avoidance pattern kicks in, the cost is high. Studies show it can take around 23 minutes on average to regain the same level of focus after a single break. Keeping things bite-sized protects your momentum from ever slipping into that cycle in the first place. Some people worry that small sessions feel insignificant, almost like they do count. But this is exactly where the hidden power lies. Small blocks of focus are the bridge between the idea and the identity. Each one redefines how you see yourself, not as someone who struggles to start, but as someone who shows up daily to do the work. That shift matters more than achieving a perfect 3-hour routine today. Once your identity adjusts, larger routines grow out of it naturally. Over time, short sessions also give you real-world data. You begin noticing when your mind is sharpest, how your environment affects focus, and what distractions matter most. Without these daily reps, you'd never gather that knowledge, because the big sessions you imagine never even get off the ground. Small blocks strip away the theory and give you practice-driven insight. Perhaps the most overlooked benefit is that starting small eliminates the fear of failure. You can't fail at showing up for 10 minutes. Even if the work feels messy or less productive than you hoped, you still finish with a completed block. That no-lose setup protects your motivation and invites you to return the next day. Compare that with aiming for an epic 4-hour streak and falling short. The weight of that failure makes tomorrow even harder. So the paradox is this: doing less at first is what allows you to do more later. By aiming small, you build consistency, expand capacity, and train your brain to trust the process instead of fight it. Over weeks and months, those small, repeatable wins are what stack into the ability to sustain deep, meaningful work. So start with 15 minutes, make it trivial, repeat daily. Because what these small sessions really build isn't just momentum, it's a model of how your life could look if you keep stacking them. And once you begin to see that model form, it naturally raises the question: what version of your future are you already living today? The future you today. Everyone has some vision of the life they want to live in the future, the rhythm of their days, the kind of work they do, and how they spend their energy. For one person, it might be writing in the early hours before the world wakes up. For another, it's coding uninterrupted, entering that immersive flow where hours pass unseen. Others imagine running a business, carving out time for strategy and creation, or simply protecting a daily routine that makes space for genuine focus. These pictures feel close when you think about them, but daily demands, work, errands, constant digital interruptions, push them into the category of someday. The trap is that someday never arrives fully formed. People wait for the mythical window when schedules clear, stress lifts, and motivation rises. But life rarely delivers an ideal block of time. Instead, the years pass while the distance between the dream and reality quietly grows. The very image that inspires you ends up reinforcing delay. You want it badly, but the gap feels so wide that you convince yourself it's not possible yet. The overlooked truth is that the future routine already exists in seed form. It doesn't begin as a flawless, long session or a perfectly organized lifestyle. It starts when you compress the future into a small action you can practice daily. The scale doesn't matter nearly as much as the signal it sends. If you want to write each morning, even 5 minutes today sends the message: I'm a writer. Coding for 10 minutes, sketching a single design, or outlining one business idea carries the same power. Your brain attaches identity to repeated behavior, not to the size of the session. This subtle reframing is where everything shifts. Most of us assume transformation comes from bold leaps, the dramatic reinvention, the clean slate, the overhaul. That story is exciting, but it collapses quickly. What works is embarrassingly simple. Take the smallest recognizable slice of your future life and practice it now. It won't look impressive from the outside, but internally, it's rewriting who you are. The story changes from "I'll become this person later" to "I already am this person in practice." Psych research ties directly into this. Your brain warms to identities you practice daily, and every small act works like a vote for who you believe yourself to be. The size of the vote doesn't matter. What matters is showing up repeatedly. 5 minutes of writing might only yield a paragraph, but in identity terms, it's a ballot cast for writer. 10 minutes of rehearsal is a ballot for musician. Over time, those votes accumulate until they become your default identity, and with identity comes momentum. Think of a student who dreams of starting every day with an hour of writing. Instead of waiting for summer break or less coursework, they protect 5 minutes right now. Each short free write isn't just practice, it's a signal. I'm living as a student who writes daily. Slowly, those 5 minutes stretch into longer sessions, but the crucial point is that the identity takes root long before the hours appear. Waiting for the mythical perfect time would have locked the dream in place as an abstract wish. Acting at a small scale brings it into reality immediately. This same logic applies across any field. The aspiring entrepreneur who longs for full mornings of creativity and strategy doesn't need that large block yet. They just need to send one email, sketch one small idea, or brainstorm for 10 minutes tonight. Each act reframes them as already building. Or consider an athlete in training who pictures a rigorous 2-hour routine. Beginning with 5 focused minutes of bodyweight exercise today is enough to begin living the identity. Outwardly, it looks trivial. Internally, it lays a foundation. The reason this works is because starting small dissolves the waiting game. Waiting paints you as someone on the outside of your own dream. Showing up for 5 or 10 minutes paints you as someone already participating inside it. Over time, this difference grows massive. Two people, one who waits for conditions to be right and one who practices in the smallest way today, will not end up in the same place 10 years down the line. The first keeps carrying an untested dream. The second has thousands of micro-repetitions that shape their skills, focus, and identity. This idea also exposes why people underestimate the 1% version of their dream. They dismiss it as not enough. But the small version isn't meant to produce the full outcome on its own. It's meant to make the larger version inevitable. Once the identity is there, scaling becomes the obvious next step. Your routines stop feeling like a stretch and start feeling like who you are. And because you weren't waiting for the perfect time, you already have the repetitions that carry you into deeper practice. The mental payoff is just as important. Each small action rewires procrastination into participation. You no longer feel the tension of watching yourself delay. Instead, you see daily evidence, no matter how modest, that you are acting in line with the vision you value. That shift dismantles hesitation not through force, but through consistency. So here's the practical move. Identify one micro-action that represents your future routine and shrink it to a 5-minute version you can practice today. Not tomorrow when you're less busy. Not next week when the calendar lightens. Today. And when you begin doing that consistently, something else comes into focus. It's not just about painting an inspiring picture of the future anymore. It's about running that picture through the filter of your current reality. Because if we're honest, the pressures of 2025 don't just delay our ideal future routine, they directly short how long we can actually concentrate. And that fact is shaping the way all of us experience work right now. The harsh truth about focus in 2025. People often mistake being busy for being productive. Filling every moment with movement looks impressive, but when you examine what actually makes up those packed days, you see the truth. Most of that time is fragmented effort. Constant switching, small interruptions, and shallow tasks create the illusion of progress without delivering the depth required to produce meaningful results. You can easily log 8 hours of activity and still finish the day feeling like nothing significant moved forward. This is the harsh truth about focus in 2025. The environment you live in is built to fracture your attention. Notifications, endless feeds, and work platforms all compete for slices of your mind, and that competition keeps shrinking our uninterrupted concentration. Average screen-based focus now hovers at only about 47 seconds before you switch. And once you're pulled away, it can take 23 to 25 minutes just to recover the same level of focus. Put those two numbers together, and you start to see the math. Dozens of interruptions across a day don't just steal moments, they erase entire stretches of your most valuable hours. Multitasking is one of the main culprits. People assume jumping between tasks multiplies output, but it does the opposite. Multitasking doesn't speed you up. Context-switching costs are the invisible tax on your time. Each time you glance at a message or toggle to a new tab mid-project, your brain doesn't just jump, it stumbles. Researchers estimate the mental switching costs are measured in many minutes, not seconds. Guarding even 1 hour from this invisible drain can shift your day from scattered busyness to tangible depth. That's why busyness and real productivity cannot be treated as the same. You can spend a whole afternoon answering messages, moving between emails, or reacting to updates and still end feeling empty. That emptiness comes from never entering a state of real concentration, the mental place where solutions emerge and ideas connect. Without that state, all you create are fragments. They look like progress in the moment, but leave you with very little that advances your bigger goals. The contrast becomes clear when you manage to block off just 60 uninterrupted minutes. One single hour focused on a task without notifications, pop-ups, or divided attention can overshadow 6 or 7 hours of fragmented effort. Think about it. In a typical day, your work is broken into slivers of 10 or 15 minutes that never reach depth. Consolidate those fragments into a protected hour, and you experience output at a completely different scale. Studies reinforce this. Longer stretches of uninterrupted attention consistently lead to better performance, stronger memory, and higher quality results. What makes this powerful is that it doesn't require extra hours or drastic lifestyle changes. Many people resist the idea of deep work because they imagine it demands an overhaul, waking at dawn, quitting social life, remaking their schedule from scratch. But the opportunity is already within your existing day. It's not about adding time, it's about subtracting leaks. The same 8 hours can feel transformed if you capture just one for sustained focus. That carved-out span becomes proof that clarity and results come not from endless motion, but from choosing to protect depth. This recognition also highlights how deceptive busyness can be. Activity so often acts as a shield. It's easier to claim you worked all day than to admit you avoided the kind of work that demands your full attention. The appearance of busyness is rewarded socially. It signals effort, engagement, dedication. But internally, it hides the real avoidance. The avoidance of intensity, the avoidance of vulnerability that shows up when you actually concentrate on something that matters. Differentiating those two, busyness and focused work, pulls away the shield. It forces you to see which efforts are truly moving you forward and which only keep you occupied. Once you acknowledge that difference, the urgency of focus becomes obvious. In 2025, deep attention is rare, and rarity makes it more valuable. The person who trains their mind to sustain concentration gains an edge because so few around them can do the same. That one focused hour doesn't just produce in the moment, it strengthens your brain to resist the pull of fragmentation tomorrow. It builds your capacity to return to depth more quickly and to stay there longer, which compounds over months into outputs most people will never reach. The costs of distraction reveal themselves most painfully in hindsight. Projects stretch on far longer than necessary, not because you lack the ability, but because your attention was diluted. Books remain unfinished, opportunities pass untouched, not from laziness, but from the steady erosion of concentration in tiny, unremarkable moments. That's why distraction feels harmless in real time. It's only when you step back that you see the months that evaporated. This is why the fix doesn't require anything extreme. You don't need to retreat to isolation or reinvent your day to find clarity. Instead, the most effective step is carving out one protected pocket of deep work inside your current routine. 1 hour reserved for a single priority, with tabs closed and devices silenced, is enough to recalibrate your sense of progress. That span rewires your brain by showing you what becomes possible when attention is intact. And once you've felt that difference, it's difficult to accept the shallow pace of scattered work again. Value itself also shifts through this lens. In an environment where nearly everyone's energy scatters across constant multitasking, the output from one protected hour stands out by contrast. Work grounded in focus feels different because it's built on insight instead of reaction. That difference produces quality others can't replicate, even if they spend all day trying. Over time, your ability to concentrate deeply becomes your quiet advantage. It compounds results while others stay trapped in cycles of distraction. If this feels discouraging, it shouldn't. The very fact that attention has become scarce means every small effort to protect it creates disproportionate rewards. An hour of depth feels rare because it is rare, and that rarity is what makes it powerful. When you treat focus time like a limited currency to be defended, you gain far more from each block than most people can imagine. So here's the challenge. This week, try protecting one 60-minute block. No messages, no multitasking, no split attention, just one task, start to finish. When you compare what you create in that hour versus what you usually get from an entire day scattered across dozens of small efforts, the difference will feel undeniable. And once you've seen how much clarity and progress can come from protecting one block of time, the next question becomes obvious. If focus is so powerful, what hidden habits are quietly draining it from you without you even noticing? The silent saboteurs stealing your time. There are forces inside your daily routine that quietly drain your attention before you even notice. These are the silent saboteurs stealing your time, and their power lies in how small they look moment to moment. They don't appear as giant blocks of wasted time. Instead, they show up as quick checks, tiny interruptions, or moments of hesitation that seem harmless. The damage doesn't come from the seconds they take. It comes from the way they scatter your focus before it can build into anything useful. Studies consistently show it can take more than 20 minutes to regain full concentration after just one interruption, which means those harmless checks cost more than they appear. The phone is the most obvious culprit. Its surface-level pull comes in the form of notifications, buzzes, and little red dots, but the real cost is less visible. Every glance breaks the mental buildup you need to reach real focus. The brain doesn't slip seamlessly back into flow after checking a text. It resets, forcing you to climb back up to the level of depth you had before. This is why many people can sit at a desk for hours without producing much. They weren't short on time, they were short on uninterrupted attention. The simplest countermeasure is also the most effective. Put your phone physically out of reach, or turn on Do Not Disturb during any planned block of focus. If it's not within immediate reach, you eliminate most of the sabotage before it starts. Another subtle saboteur is starting the day with emails. It feels responsible, even productive, because you clear out small items quickly and respond to people who need you. But the hidden effect is that you immediately enter a reactive state. Instead of setting your own priorities, you begin the day shaped by other people's demands. Once you've adopted that mindset, it's hard to escape. It keeps you cycling through low-value responses all day. A research-backed adjustment fixes this quickly. Batch your email checks. Aim to open your inbox only 2 or 3 times per day, and never until after you've put in at least one meaningful focus session. This ensures that your best energy is spent on your own priorities, not diluted across dozens of requests before you even begin. Lack of clarity is another thief that often goes unnoticed. Even when the time is blocked, many people sit down without knowing exactly what the most important task should be. The brain, left without direction, defaults to whatever feels easiest, whether that's shallow research, a quick message, or busy tasks that deliver comfort instead of progress. The result is effort without forward movement, which quickly turns the most valuable hours into frustration. A practical fix is to decide your single top leverage task the night before, or at the very least, before you begin your day. Write it down somewhere visible. This priority ladder gives your mind no room to wander aimlessly when you sit down, and makes sure your energy moves to the task that actually matters. The danger of these traps lies in how innocent they feel in isolation. Glancing once at your phone doesn't feel like sabotage. Neither does answering a few morning emails or working without a written plan. But each one triggers a chain of fragmentation. One glance leads to another, one email stretches into dozens, one vague work session fills with small tasks that don't matter. By the afternoon, you feel behind, and by the evening, you convince yourself you ran out of time. In reality, the hours were there all along. They just leaked away in tiny, preventable moments. What's encouraging is that plugging these leaks doesn't require radical changes. You don't need extra hours or a new life setup. A few small protections reverse the damage almost immediately. Move your phone across the room before you start. Batch email into set windows instead of having it open all day. Write down your most important task before you go to sleep. Each of these steps looks simple, but they remove the invisible drains that keep most people stuck in shallow work. When you start experimenting with these changes, you'll notice how much time you already had but weren't using fully. 2 hours that used to disappear into distractions can suddenly produce a finished draft, a clear solution to a problem, or a strong step forward in a project you care about. The hours were never missing. They were hidden under interruptions and indecision. By spotting and closing these gaps, you stop handing away focus you already own. This shift also changes how you view the day. A notification is no longer just a notification. It's a choice that either protects or leaks your attention. Opening your inbox too early is no longer just a habit. It's agreeing to let others decide what matters before you get the chance. Skipping clarity isn't just a stumble. It's giving permission for your best hours to dissolve into unplanned effort. When you see distractions this way, the pressure lifts. You're not fighting against time itself. You're simply defending what you already have. Here's a quick experiment to prove this to yourself. Step 1, put your phone in another room. Step 2, set a 15-minute timer and work on a single task with 0 interruptions. At the end, ask yourself, did you last the full sprint? And if so, did you go beyond it naturally? Drop your answer in the comments, because noticing how your focus stretches when protected is the first glimpse of what's possible. This kind of experiment is small, but it shows how simple changes shift the entire structure of your time. And once you've experienced that win, it raises an obvious question, not about isolated hacks, but about what happens if you consistently scale these protected sessions over time. Your 6-month transformation framework. Here, where structure makes all the difference. Your 6-month transformation framework. Up to now, we've looked at why distractions drain your best hours and how small wins protect your focus. But if you want to actually build the ability to work deeply on command, you need a plan that scales gradually instead of leaving you stuck in that start-stop cycle of hacks. This 6-month roadmap is that plan. It doesn't require extreme discipline upfront. It asks for consistent practice that compounds into lasting change. Why 6 months? Because that's long enough for habits to take root, but short enough that progress feels real. Most research on habit formation and skill growth suggests that identity-level change happens through steady repetition across weeks and months, not overnight. Think of it like physical training. You don't walk into the gym and lift your max weight on day 1. You repeat lighter sets until the movement feels natural, then steadily add more. Work capacity builds in the same way. This 6-month system is designed around 3 distinct phases that mirror that process. Here's the progression, broken down month by month so you know exactly what to do. Month 1, start with 15 minutes of deep work every day. Your only goal is consistency. Hit at least 21 out of 30 days. Don't worry about intensity or flawless output, just protect that short window and show up for it. At this stage, what matters is proving to yourself that focus is possible in small, repeatable doses. A simple way to reinforce momentum is by tracking streaks. Use a calendar, habit tracker app, or even checkboxes on paper. Every time you complete a 15-minute block, mark it down. Over time, the chain itself becomes a source of motivation. You'll want to keep it alive. Months 2 and 3, begin scaling. Every 2 weeks, add 5 to 10 minutes to your block until you reach 45 to 60 minutes. At first, these longer sessions may feel like a stretch, but you'll draw strength from the foundation you set in month 1. By the end of month 3, sitting for an uninterrupted hour of focus will feel far less intimidating. This is where real project momentum kicks in. Essays, outlines, designs, or whatever matters most to you starts to take visible shape. Cal Newport's philosophy of deep work suggests exactly this kind of rhythmic practice, short, structured bursts expanded gradually until longer focus sessions feel natural. You're giving your brain the reps it needs to handle extended concentration. Months 4 to 6, now you move into advanced capacity. The aim is 2 hours of deep work in a day, 3 to 5 times per week. You can structure this a few different ways. Some prefer one continuous 2-hour window in the morning when energy is highest. Others split it into 2 60-minute blocks, morning and evening. There is no single correct choice. Experiment and see what slots best into your life. The important part is that, by this point, even 2 hours doesn't feel like a wait. You've been scaling toward it the entire time. Your nervous system no longer resists. Your mind expects focus, and you start entering flow states with far greater ease. Notice the pattern. Every step stacks on top of the last. Each 15-minute block in month 1 laid the foundation for 30 and 45 minutes in months 2 and 3. Each of those hour-long sessions prepared you for the 2-hour sessions in months 4 through 6. You're not forcing yourself into deep work through raw willpower. You're layering habits until focus becomes routine. That's why 6 months is enough to build something people struggle to achieve in years. Sustained deep work that feels doable long-term. To reinforce this growth, focus less on perfection during your sessions and more on simply turning up. Track streaks, not outcomes. It doesn't matter if a particular 30-minute block felt sluggish or you only wrote a few sentences. What matters is that you honored the commitment. That identity, I'm the kind of person who shows up for daily deep work, is the real transformation. The results will follow automatically because hours spent in focus compound. Over 6 months, that adds up to dozens of hours of real progress, far beyond what random experiments could achieve. Also helpful to set small checkpoints at the end of each phase. After month 1, check your record. Did you make the 21-day goal? After month 3, did you reach 45 to 60 minutes comfortably? If not, stay with a slightly shorter duration another week before scaling. This is not about racing ahead, it's about stability. Likewise, at month 6, don't treat the 2-hour target as rigid. If your schedule works better with 3 90-minute sessions a week, that's still a win. The point is predictable progression, not arbitrary numbers. Through this structure, you avoid the common trap, trying to overhaul everything at once. That's why so many burn out after just a few days. They aim for perfection immediately instead of layering consistency into capacity. By working with smaller jumps, your sessions grow stronger without becoming fragile. The process feels attainable because it's designed to fit inside real life, not fight against it. And the payoff is significant. 6 months of steady scaling leaves you with a skill most people never acquire: the ability to sit down, silence distractions, and sustain deep concentration in service of a meaningful goal. That discipline doesn't disappear when the calendar flips. It carries forward, giving you a permanent advantage in whatever field you apply it. But even as you build this ability, another question emerges. You can protect your focus, scale it, and extend it, but all of that is wasted if you point that focus at the wrong thing. 2 hours of deep work spent on low-value tasks won't transform your future. How you choose what to work on matters just as much as how long you can concentrate. The priority ladder of productivity. When you sit down to work, not every task carries the same weight. Some activities are high-leverage investments that shape your future, while others are shallow rituals that only make you feel busy. The priority ladder of productivity gives you a simple way to separate the two. Imagine 4 rungs on a ladder. At the top are the tasks that transform your direction. At the bottom are distractions disguised as work. The more you train yourself to climb toward the top, the more your deep work hours compound into progress. The first rung, priority 1, is your highest value work: vision-driven projects, creative output, or tasks that change your trajectory over the long term. This is where your best energy belongs. For a student, that might be writing the essay that makes up 40% of their grade. For a creator, it's producing a video or writing a piece that builds their portfolio. For someone in an entry-level job, it could be tackling the analysis or presentation that gets noticed by leadership. These are the things that, if repeated consistently, alter your future. Without intention, these are also the things most likely to be avoided because they feel heavy and carry the risk of failure. Priority 2 is the supporting layer. These tasks don't transform your life directly, but make the top rung possible. Think of outlining before drafting a paper, creating a content plan before filming, or prepping research before pitching an idea at work. They matter because they funnel into the high-leverage tasks above them. Done correctly, they pave the road. Done aimlessly, they replicate the comfort of busy work. The key here is attachment. Support tasks should always connect upward. If the outline isn't leading to the essay, or the data isn't feeding into the project, you're mistaking motion for momentum. The third rung is maintenance, the shallow but necessary items that keep your world running. That's email, scheduling, filing, system updates, and the dozens of background actions that support daily life. They need to get done, but they don't deserve your prime focus. A common trap is wasting your peak hours here, convincing yourself you're productive because boxes are getting checked. Research shows shallow work expands to fill space if you don't create boundaries, which is why experts recommend corralling these items into a single block, say 45 to 90 minutes in the afternoon. Handle all of them at once, then move on. This gate keeps shallow tasks from leaking into the hours reserved for actual deep work. At the very bottom, priority 4, sit pure distractions, compulsive email refreshes, endless scrolling, needless status checks. These deliver no long-term value but still feel urgent because they come wrapped in novelty or immediacy. Checking notifications 10 times an hour, refreshing dashboards, or rereading a document without changing anything are prime examples. Each glance costs more than a few seconds. It pulls you down the ladder entirely, snapping your attention away from higher work. The solution here is not moderation, but removal. Silence notifications, push these activities outside focus hours, or cut them entirely. This is the clearest way to protect the limited pool of attention you actually control. Think of the ladder as a filter, not a theory. Before you begin a block of focus, ask yourself, which rung am I stepping onto right now? Top rung tasks deserve the first hours of your day when your mind is freshest. Support tasks belong close by but never displace the top. Maintenance gets clustered into its own low-energy window, and distractions are pushed out wherever possible. Even one adjustment, like moving email checks out of your mornings, shifts hours back to the top rungs of the ladder. To make this practical, write down one clear priority 1 task before you start a session. Don't keep it vague. Name the exact action, finish the first draft, complete 3 math problems, draft slides 1 through 5. During the session, if you drift into lower rungs, this acts like an anchor. It reminds you what deserves your return. This simple ritual strips away the excuse of "I thought I was making progress." You know, in black and white, what task actually counts. It's tempting to hover in the safer middle or bottom rungs because they feel lighter. Checking 10 emails is easier than writing 1 critical page. Cleaning up a spreadsheet is easier than presenting findings to your team. These activities shield you from the discomfort of heavier tasks, which is why people often use them as avoidance tools. But avoidance is expensive because it consumes the very energy needed for the higher work. A short burst on a priority 1 task moves your life forward more than hours shuffled across levels 3 and 4, which means the real productivity question isn't, "Did I stay busy?" but "Did I climb upward?" To illustrate, picture 3 versions of a morning. A student starts with priority 1 and spends an hour locked into essay writing. Another starts with priority 3, answering emails, organizing folders, reviewing the syllabus, and never makes it to actual writing. The third drifts to priority 4, scrolling through group chats and social feeds. All 3 spent time at a desk, but only the first has something substantial to show. The latter explains why. Without it, all time looks the same. With it, you see what actually counts. Or imagine a content creator. At the top of their ladder is recording a video. Supporting that are tasks like outlining and ideation. At maintenance level are responding to comments or tweaking graphics. At distraction level is obsessively refreshing views instead of creating new work. By placing activities on the ladder, they can schedule their energy properly. Morning deep blocks go to recording, afternoon maintenance is batched, and distractions are cut. The same hours produce radically different results, depending on which rung gets defended first. Even in corporate work, the ladder reorders energy. Priority 1 might be solving a major system problem or writing a proposal. Priority 2 is gathering data or meeting briefly with a colleague who provides input. Priority 3 is inbox and scheduling, which you batch toward the end of the day. Priority 4 are pings and chat notifications that you mute until later. Ascending the ladder becomes a habit of preparation, structuring your day before you start instead of trying to triage every incoming ping. The advantage of this framework is that it simplifies decisions. Without categories, you burn minutes deciding if an email demands immediate response or if a task is important enough to start now. With the ladder, you already know the seat it belongs in. The sequence is fixed. Protect the top, support directly below, corral maintenance into 1 batch, and eliminate the bottom. There's no drama in the moment, only execution. This clarity strips away self-deception. You can no longer claim you worked hard if all your effort lived in levels 3 and 4. Progress isn't about activity, it's about placement. 1 strong hour at the top eclipses an entire day wasted at the bottom. And the habit of identifying your rung prevents the slide into aimless busyness disguised as productivity. Here's the small ritual worth repeating every day. Before a work block, write down 1 top-tier task you're defending. Begin with that task. If distractions appear, and they will, use the written task as a compass to return. At the end of a week, check what actually received priority. If every day opened on top-level work, you'll notice how much further you've moved compared with weeks spent trying to stay busy. This exercise takes less than a minute, but it reorders the entire structure of your focus. When you apply the ladder consistently, your time blocks stop being random and start becoming directional. Each rung has its place, but only the top deserves your concentration. That framework turns daily effort into cumulative movement. Once you've separated real progress from disguised activity, the challenge isn't choosing what to work on anymore. It's learning how to hold that focus steady when distractions inevitably try to drag you down the ladder. How to force your brain into focus mode. Even with a solid plan in place, focus doesn't always arrive on demand. You can set up the perfect schedule, pick a quiet spot, and choose the right task, but within minutes, the urge creeps in to check your phone or open another tab. This pull isn't proof that you lack discipline. It's a built-in response. Modern tools train the brain to crave quick rewards, and sustained focus feels harder by comparison. The good news is that you can sidestep this cycle by setting up systems that make focus automatic. Think of it less as forcing yourself to concentrate and more as arranging the conditions that make concentration the easier default. The reason deep focus feels heavy at first is simple. The brain burns more energy sustaining it than when it skims lightly across tasks. That energy cost is why your body nudges you toward an easier option like scrolling. Instead of relying only on willpower, which is limited and fades as the day wears on, you need strategies that smooth the transition into concentration without demanding constant resistance. Start with environment design. Why? Your surroundings often control your attention more than sheer effort does. How? Put your phone in another room and close every tab not directly tied to the task before you begin. When the temptations aren't in reach, you don't waste energy fighting them. Even small frictions, like having to get up to grab your phone, are often enough to prevent breaks that would derail momentum. Next is the single task rule. Why? Multitasking spreads your energy thin and destroys depth. How? Only keep the one tool you're using for the task visible. If you're writing, it's your document, nothing else. If you're studying, it's your notes or problem set, no split screens, no half-ready tabs. By stripping the workspace down to one thing, you block micro-switching before it can occur. It sounds overly simple, but treating single tasking as a ritual resets how concentrated your energy feels within minutes. Then there's accountability triggers. Why? External signals hold you in place when motivation dips. How? Set a visible timer and commit to working until it rings, or better, use pre-commitment proof. That means announcing your focus session and task to someone in advance, comment it publicly, send a DM, or text a friend. Once you've declared it, your brain feels the pressure of expectation. Even if no one replies, the act of committing out loud anchors you into the block of work. This tactic not only reinforces the session for you, but builds interactive accountability if you encourage others to comment their own pre-commitments beside yours. A fourth tactic is reward timing. Why? Banning distractions creates resistance, but reframing them creates leverage. How? Postpone them as rewards for finishing. If you enjoy scrolling, make it your prize only after the session is done. Rather than fighting to suppress cravings, you reposition them on the other side of progress. Over time, the mind links focus to enjoyment, because that's the pathway to what it wants. There's one more nuance worth adding: internet blockers. Research from Gloria Mark and the American Psychological Association suggests blockers can help people who struggle with self-control. But for those with stronger self-regulation, they might backfire by preventing small, useful breaks. The takeaway is not to assume blockers are good or bad universally, but to treat them as experiments. Try one for a week, track whether it leaves you feeling sharper or drained, and adjust accordingly. The right system is the one that works with your energy, not against it. What unites all these strategies is that none demand superhuman willpower. They reduce the decisions that would otherwise chip away at it. When you pre-decide, phone in another room, one window on screen, timer running, reward waiting, your brain doesn't keep posing the same question. Should I focus or not? The choice isn't hanging in the air anymore. The systems carry it for you. The real benefit here is psychological. Instead of blaming yourself for every lapse, you see distraction as the natural baseline of the brain, not a personal failure. Once you accept that, you can stop tying shame into focus and start tying structure into it. This shift makes a practical difference. Shame slows you down, but systems speed you up. With the right setup, the resistance you're used to at the beginning of a deep work block fades much faster. And these tactics combine. Used together, they form a stronger net than any one alone. Environment design clears away the obvious temptations. Single tasking locks your attention to what matters. Accountability reinforces follow-through. Rewards reshape craving into motivation. Experiments with blockers let you fine-tune based on your own habits. Alone, each piece helps. Layered, they create a routine where focus almost feels automatic, because the path of least resistance is now the same as the path of most progress. Over time, the result isn't just better focus sessions, it's a different self-image. You stop thinking of yourself as someone who struggles to get started and start viewing yourself as someone who can build conditions that guarantee concentration. That shift is powerful. It means you're not waiting for a perfect day when motivation magically appears. You're creating the proof daily that focus is something you can manufacture, not simply hope for. To test this, try running your next session with all 4 techniques stacked. Remove your phone, reduce your screen to 1 tab, set a public accountability note or timer, and assign your favorite distraction as a post-session reward. In 15 minutes, see how different the experience feels compared to your usual environment. What you'll notice is that your distractions are gone, but that they stop feeling so persuasive. The system carries you into flow before impatience can kick in. The key is repetition. The more often you run these systems, the less energy you spend forcing yourself to start. Instead, starting becomes routine. Within weeks, what once felt like a strained uphill push smooths out into something you expect of yourself automatically. Once you feel this difference, another realization follows. These focus tools aren't limited to big creative projects or late-night study sessions. They're flexible. That same system can be applied in almost any context. And this is where many people get it wrong. They assume deep work belongs only to a narrow group of professionals. In reality, the exact structure can adapt to nearly any career. Every career can use this routine. Every career hides at least one task that benefits far more from focus than from busyness, and those who learn to protect that time consistently start to separate themselves from the crowd. Once you recognize this, the idea of deep work stops looking like a luxury and starts looking like a requirement for meaningful progress. The form changes depending on the field, but the principle stays the same. Identify the key activity that drives outsized value and commit even a short daily block of undistracted attention toward it. Students are one of the clearest examples. Many study by rereading, highlighting, or scrolling through material, thinking that time equals preparation. But shallow reviewing rarely builds real retention. A concentrated block spent on active recall, closing the book and testing yourself on the hardest concepts, burns knowledge in far deeper. 15 minutes of this each day solidifies learning better than scattered hours. If you're studying, try timing one 15-minute recall session today. Put notes away, set a timer, and see what you can reproduce. That simple routine can carry more weight than a whole evening of half-distracted review. Creatives often grasp the need for focus, but still slip into shallow work disguised as progress. Gathering inspiration, tweaking fonts, or watching tutorials feels safe but keeps them from producing. What resets progress is dedicated creation time. A short, protected block spent sketching a concept, drafting a scene, or recording an idea produces something tangible to refine later. 15 minutes is enough. For a designer, that could be a quick thumbnail sketch. For a musician, it could be recording a rough chorus. For a filmmaker, it might be drafting one storyboard panel. Producing something real, however unfinished, outpaces days lost in browsing. In corporate roles, the calendar and inbox are often treated as the work itself, which hides the real value buried underneath. Meetings and quick replies make you appear engaged, but the rare output that moves decisions comes from uninterrupted analysis, writing, or problem-solving. Even with a crowded schedule, carving out one block returns disproportionate results. Draft a one-page memo clarifying an idea. Dive deeper into data and extract one insight that others missed. Just 15 focused minutes without tabs or email open can produce clarity that people notice. Remote and hybrid setups often reduce chatter, which means those who set clear boundaries here can protect deep work time more effectively and prove their value where others get lost in reaction. For engineers, the same conditions apply. Many spend hours context switching between bug fixes and internal chats, completing dozens of small steps but never breaking through larger blockers. In contrast, focus blocks aimed at one hard technical problem accelerate projects noticeably. A single uninterrupted session to rework a flawed piece of code or outline a system design can deliver what scattered hours miss. The action item is clear. Choose one current technical obstacle and spend 15 minutes on it without breaks. Even if you don't solve it outright, you'll advance more in that one span than through a day of toggling windows. Entrepreneurs face distraction on another level, the temptation to be omnipresent, available for every message, and responsive to everything at once. But growth is usually tied to a handful of high-leverage moves: refining product design, writing strategic plans, creating core company content. These are easily overshadowed if boundaries vanish. Setting aside one quiet morning block to focus can shift months of trajectory. If you run a business, test it today. Take a single 15-minute block to outline the vision for your next product or write bullet points for a pitch. Customers and investors notice clear thinking more than they notice instant replies. Teachers often know the material, but need time to shape it into effective delivery. With schedules filled with classes and grading, preparation can become rushed and repetitive. But one short block focused on redesigning a single activity or clarifying a concept builds engagement over an entire term. A simple version is setting a timer for 15 minutes and reworking one lesson plan, adding an example or exercise that connects to students directly. That concentrated prep is the difference between recycling old material and energizing a class with clarity. Healthcare professionals live under intense time pressure, which makes preparation look like a luxury. In practice, it often saves far more time later. A short block spent reviewing a case thoroughly, analyzing new research, or planning a treatment path can prevent confusion, errors, and unnecessary backtracking across many appointments. The direct application: take a 15-minute window before a complex case to map potential questions or alternative approaches. That structured prep multiplies the quality of the time you spend face-to-face with patients. Freelancers, no matter the industry, risk falling into reactive cycles dictated by clients. It feels necessary to respond instantly, but when availability replaces output, quality slips. The ones who thrive are those who carve protected time for execution. For a freelance writer, that means closing the inbox and drafting one piece uninterrupted. For a coder, it means blocking off a span to build new features rather than just reacting to tickets. A simple action: set one 15-minute timer today and advance the project itself before responding to a single client message. Deliverables build trust faster than rapid responses ever could. Even outside traditional work, the same principle holds. Parents managing family logistics benefit from focused planning sessions instead of constant reactive adjustments. 15 minutes spent clearly mapping schedules, financial tasks, or key responsibilities makes the whole week smoother. Shifting to focus mode for even that short window keeps problems from compounding later. The pattern here becomes obvious when simplified into if, then form. If you're a student, then 15 minutes of active recall strengthens learning more than hours of rereading. If you're a creative, then 15 minutes creating produces more progress than endless inspiration hunting. If you're in corporate or engineering, then 15 minutes clarifying ideas or solving one technical problem separates you from shallow work around you. If you're an entrepreneur, then 15 minutes refining strategy steers growth more than instant responses do. If you're a teacher, then 15 minutes redesigning a lesson lifts an entire classroom. If you're in healthcare, then 15 minutes of thorough preparation prevents hours of confusion later. If you're a freelancer, then 15 minutes pushing a project forward increases trust more than being available all day. In any domain, choosing your best lever and protecting even one block of time shifts results. When you step back, the approach is not complicated. In every career, the mistake is assuming deep work needs endless hours. The reality is that focus starts to build power even inside a narrow window. All it requires is clarity on what deserves your best energy and a deliberate choice to practice it today. The long blocks can grow later. The identity forms the moment you start. And this is why the habit carries such weight. Once you see that 15 minutes can change the quality of your work in any role, the next question isn't whether it applies to you. It's what begins to unfold after you've repeated it long enough to gain traction. That's where something unexpected starts to happen. The hours don't just accumulate, they gather momentum. The unexpected joy of momentum. At first, momentum doesn't feel like joy at all. It feels like silence. You sit for those early 5 or 10-minute blocks and wonder if they count for anything. The work is so small that it barely registers. A half-page draft, one solved problem, a few minutes of study. Nothing looks impressive, not to you and certainly not to anyone else. That's the stage when quitting feels tempting, because your old belief still whispers that productivity only matters if the results are instantly visible. But this hidden beginning is what sets the stage for everything that follows. The early boredom is not wasted effort. It's your brain learning that showing up is normal, not unusual. Then something subtle starts to change. Each short session leaves behind a trace, one page filed, one idea organized, one step crossed off. Add dozens of traces together and they stop looking like crumbs. They form a chain. The real surprise is internal. the moment you realize that the chain itself is proof of who you are becoming. At first you felt like an imposter, a student pretending to study deeply, or a creator pretending to work seriously. But stacked sessions start to flip that feeling. The label shifts from "I'm trying" to "I'm someone who does this." These aren't just repetitions, they're identity votes. That identity is what begins to hold the habit in place long before the long-term payoffs arrive. Momentum doesn't only change how you see yourself, it changes how work feels. In the beginning, it feels like cost. You give energy and attention away with no sense of return. But as the chain lengthens, the feeling reverses. The sessions stop looking like expenses and start looking like deposits. You look back and see that an essay is half finished, a project is assembled, or a skill is stronger than it was a month ago. Those visible results change the math of effort. Focus no longer belongs in the category of sacrifice, it lands in the category of reward. The unexpected joy of momentum lies right here. The weight you once dreaded becomes something you lean on for strength. The next surprise is enjoyment. Many people believe focus will always feel heavy, but once you've repeated these small blocks often enough, the mind starts slipping into flow with less resistance. Suddenly, there are days when an hour disappears and you didn't notice time passing. That pleasure didn't appear by luck. It came from the habit of sitting down long enough to trigger it. What you once thought was reserved for entertainment begins to show up inside your own work. Energy that once leaked into distraction now feeds the exact task you avoided, and that feels better than you expected. This is also the point where passion shifts. Passion usually follows practice, not the other way around. Once momentum reveals progress and flow, your motivation grows directly out of consistency, not inspiration. A practical truth holds all of this together. Momentum only survives if you protect the streak. Perfection isn't required, but continuity matters. Research on habits shows that visible tracking is one of the strongest motivators. A wall calendar, a streak app, even a hand-drawn list, all provide evidence that the chain is still intact. Missing a day here and there doesn't destroy it, but allowing long breaks makes the identity falter. That's why a small experiment works so well. Try a 7-day streak of short sessions. Don't aim huge, just prove to yourself that you can string together consistency. By day 7, the chain will feel different compared to day 1. Comment your results when you attempt it. Your own record will surprise you. Momentum's joy doesn't come only from ease or pride. It comes from the realization that hesitation no longer rules you. Before, every start was a debate. Should I do it? Is it worth it? Later, those questions fade. The habit takes the burden off your mind. You don't argue anymore about whether to practice. You simply know you will. The emotional weight you once carried shifts off your shoulders. That clarity is its own reward because decision fatigue, which drains so many people, vanishes in this area of your life. When you remove debate, you create momentum's clean path forward. Momentum is powerful enough to change how you handle setbacks. Without it, one missed day easily snowballs into a week, and the week into quitting altogether. With it, a missed session feels uncomfortable, even disruptive, because it's out of line with your new identity. Instead of throwing off the chain, you want to repair it. The habit itself pulls you back, not through guilt, but through alignment. It feels wrong not to continue, which is why the best protection for long-term focus is not motivation or discipline, but momentum itself. The more you experience this, the more momentum feeds confidence. You stop needing constant external reassurance. The numbers in your own log, the pages you've written, the sessions you've counted, the hours you've defended become proof. Proof beats permission. Proof beats theory. You know the system works because you've lived it, and that history makes it easier to trust yourself moving forward. And in all of this is the core realization. The real joy of momentum is that you gain results more quickly, but that the habit begins to carry you forward when you'd expect to stall. What felt impossible at the beginning becomes your new normal. Progress shifts from being forced to being natural. Focus shifts from feeling like punishment to feeling like alignment. And beyond the achievement itself, there's relief in knowing you aren't fighting your mind in the same exhausting way anymore. So momentum isn't just progress, it's freedom. Freedom from starting over each day. Freedom from arguing with yourself. Freedom from waiting around for passion or perfect conditions. The early boredom pays off with long-term ease. The tiny chain of small wins builds strength until the habit itself lifts you. That's why the payoff feels joyful, because the struggle that held you back at the beginning is no longer running the show. But despite all this, many people still avoid routines like these. Why? Often it's because the way productivity gets framed feels so heavy that it puts people off before they even begin. Too serious, too stiff, too weighed down by rules. And when something feels that severe, your first instinct is to resist it. The hidden humor in productivity. Productivity carries this reputation of being heavy and painfully serious, like you're signing up for a duty where enjoyment is forbidden and discipline is the only emotion allowed. But the reality doesn't have to feel that bleak. In fact, once you step back from your own behavior, focus routines can look unintentionally funny. The little rituals and self-sabotages we all do aren't signs of brokenness. They're often absurd enough to make you laugh once you notice them. And that laughter makes the whole process easier to carry. Take procrastination. It has a way of sending you into bizarre, oddly specific detours. You sit down to write a paragraph, and suddenly you decide the remote control needs to be cleaned more thoroughly than it has been in years. You meant to start reading, but 5 minutes later you're alphabetizing the spice rack. Say it out loud, and it's hard not to laugh. That humor matters. When you see the avoidance for what it is, funny, not fatal, you rob it of power. Excuses are a comedy routine of their own. You convince yourself you can't get started because the pen doesn't write smoothly enough, or you check a quick notification that somehow turns into a 40-minute scroll marathon. In the moment, it feels urgent. Told back, it sounds like satire. Humor breaks the illusion that these excuses are legitimate roadblocks. They're quirks, and quirks are easier to handle, especially when you can smile at them and move forward. Think about stamina. The same person who can marathon a whole season of a show with iron concentration finds 20 minutes of deep work unbearable. That contrast isn't depressing, it's hilarious. It reveals the brain's preferences in a way statistics can't. We clearly have the endurance for focus, but we keep deploying it in easier directions. Laughing at the irony doesn't dismiss the struggle. It makes the contradiction too obvious to ignore. Once you frame it that way, focus resistance stops looking like a permanent flaw and more like a silly mismatch of energy. Shame is one of the biggest opponents of progress. After a missed block, most people spiral into self-criticism. Shame paralyzes you. Humor lets you try again. If you miss your study session because you spent 45 minutes reorganizing files on your desktop, you can either declare yourself doomed, or you can laugh at your brain's love of fake productivity. That small laugh disarms guilt and opens the door to restart. Humor works like a reset button you actually want to press. And failures are guaranteed. No system erases distraction if you're alive in the modern world. You will cook unnecessarily elaborate snacks, stare at screens doing nothing, or invest entire sessions rearranging your desk. If you demand perfection, these slips feel like deal breakers. If you respond with humor, of course I treated making a sandwich like producing a cooking show instead of doing my task, then you move on faster. Lighter responses keep momentum alive where guilt would have killed it. You can even use humor to break resistance at the exact start. Picture this. You promise yourself you'll write one sentence, but the dread feels enormous. Instead of sulking, exaggerate it in your head. Apparently writing 15 words could end my career and maybe civilization itself. Laugh at that thought, and the weight shrinks instantly. Humor doesn't just ease embarrassment after mistakes, it reduces the drag before you begin. The fake work rituals are comedy material too. There's making an elaborate to-do list, then congratulating yourself as if checking the boxes is the same as completing the tasks. Or carefully reformatting notes twice without absorbing anything. These tricks aren't malicious, they're just funny signals that your brain would rather asterisk look productive than actually be productive. When you notice it, instead of fuming, you can smile and call it out. Nice move, brain. But let's return to the actual job. That little laugh reduces blame and lets you steer the session back where it belongs. There's also humor in the social angle. Everyone has quirks, and some are so specific they border on performance. The person who can't begin until every desk object is aligned perfectly. The coworker who refills their water bottle 6 times an hour in the name of hydration discipline. Sharing these quirks gets better results than hiding them. People laugh, recognize themselves in your story, and suddenly the shame of having odd routines turns into connection. You realize distraction isn't a personal defect, It's a universal joke we're all part of. Humor even saves you when focus slips inside the session. Say you've been staring at the same sentence like it's the Rosetta Stone for 10 minutes straight. If you snap into self-attack, you waste more energy on shame. If you quip to yourself, well, apparently I've mastered the art of memorizing one sentence, the absurdity makes you grin and reset. That laugh lowers friction, and getting back to work feels less like punishment and more like a quick course correction. The balance matters. Some voices in productivity treat mistakes so gravely that the journey feels suffocating. Others crack jokes with no structure, which makes you laugh but not progress. The practical approach is to blend both: clear frameworks to hold your habits, humor to keep them from crushing you. One without the other breaks down. Together, they make space for real consistency. That's why humor should be treated as a tool, not a distraction. It's not about mocking yourself, it's about reframing failure in a way that keeps you showing up. Laughing at your procrastination quirks doesn't erase their impact, but it takes away the edge that feeds guilt. Humor transforms what would have become paralysis into a simple reset. Instead of, "I blew it again," you tell yourself, "That was ridiculous, now back to it." That tiny shift makes the habit sustainable. And here's where you can join in. Think about your funniest moment of procrastination, the strangest or most unnecessary detour your brain convinced you was important. Maybe polishing silverware before homework, maybe organizing old files before writing the intro. Drop it in the comments. You'll find you're not alone, and you might even laugh at other people's detours too. Shared humor doesn't just drive connection, it dissolves the shame that keeps people secretive about their distractions. When you build routines this way, strong structure mixed with laughter, the road to consistency feels lighter. The habit no longer demands perfection. It embraces your humanity, quirks included, and uses them as sparks instead of obstacles. The focus blocks still demand effort, but the emotional approach radically changes. You're not punishing yourself into progress. You're building alongside your own flaws and diffusing them one laugh at a time. The real win here is sustainability. Nobody lasts 6 months by turning work into a drill where failure equals catastrophe. They last because the process begins to feel approachable. Humor is what lets you keep walking even after you trip. It's what turns the path from intimidating into repeatable. And repeatable is where transformation actually happens. So if you're wondering why this matters, here's the truth. When feedback loops include both proof and lightness, the routine sticks. The systems handle the discipline, humor erases the guilt, and together they keep you going past the early hurdles. All that's left then is to keep stacking those minutes of focus, one block at a time. Every laugh clears the resistance a little more, until the routine isn't just manageable, it's natural. And once it feels natural, you realize something important. The future you're imagining doesn't arrive in a single leap. It grows gradually, out of the minutes you start protecting right now. The path forward is simple. Start with one 15-minute block today and scale it step by step until 2 hours of deep focus feels natural. That's the transformation. Your daily minutes compound into a capability that reshapes your future. So here's the challenge. What will you protect for 15 minutes today? Drop it in the comments. If this framework was useful, tap like and subscribe. It helps more than you think. Remember, attention now averages less than a minute on a screen. Protect minutes because deep focus is rare. One session today is the proof that your change has started.